Welcome to the installation and configuration of Windows Active Directory and DNS. In the previous videos, we have discussed the new features introduced in SQL Server 2017 general availability. For this tutorial series, we will be using Oracle VirtualBox for the installation of virtual machines. First, we will begin with the installation of Windows Server 2016. We'll run through the setup of Windows Server 2016 and we'll choose GUI for the training purpose. But we can definitely install the core edition as well, which will give us a better performance as there will be less GUI components to be loaded. But we need some advanced administration skills to manage and maintain the servers. Okay, so what is an Active Directory? Okay, Active Directory is a Windows OS directory service that facilitates working with interconnected, complex, different network resources in a unified manner. Now, Active Directory was initially released with Windows Server 2000 and revised with additional features in Server 2008. Active Directory provides a common interface for organizing and maintaining information related to resources connected to a variety of network directories. The directories may be system based like Windows OS, application specific, or network resources like printers. Active Directory serves as a single data store for quick data access to all users and controls access for users based on directory's security policy. Active Directory has a couple of network resources: the Lightweight Directory Access Protocol (LDAP), an open standard used to access other directory services; security service using principles of SSL or Secure Socket Layer and Kerberos based authentication; hierarchical and internal storage of organizational data in a centralized location for faster access and better network administration. Now, what is DNS? The domain name service, the domain name system or DNS is a system for naming computers and network services that is organized into a hierarchy of domains. DNS is required for the support of Active Directory domain services. As an example, we can say that a client computer sends the name of a remote host to a DNS server, which responds with its corresponding IP. The client computer can then send messages directly to the remote host's IP address. Now, in case a DNS server does not have an entry in its database for the remote host, it can respond to the client with the address of a different DNS server that is more likely to have information about the remote host, or it can query the other DNS itself. So let's begin with the installation of Windows Server 2016. We are using Oracle VirtualBox as mentioned before. So let's begin with the installation. The setup is typically a standard setup which we'll be using. We'll be using a data center edition with desktop experience. Okay, and we are using an evaluation edition which will be expiring in 180 days. Okay, so first of all, we'll choose, as you see, there are a lot of options. So we will be choosing the last option, that is Windows Server 2016 Data Center with desktop experience. Okay, we'll accept the license. We'll click on custom. There's just one disk, so we'll click next and the setup will begin. Now we'll zoom through this setup for the benefit of timelines. Basically, here the setup will be expanding the files which are required for a setup. So a 4 GB setup will blow up your hard disk to essentially 10 to 15 GB of your hard disk space when you choose a desktop experience. And this will be followed further by updates once the installation begins. The setup or the installation should not take 15 to 20 minutes normally, and will be followed by a system restart, and the setup will continue. Now, this is the timelines mentioned will vary from system to system and will depend upon the amount of resources that you have put in this virtual machine while you are building it. As you can see, the installation is now finished. So this will be followed by a system restart as mentioned before. So this screen shows up, and you can either wait for the restart to happen automatically, or you can click on restart now. So we'll just wait, and so the system is restarting now. Okay, so this is what the system boot screen looks like once the setup is complete. So this is the first time it will be booting up, and post this you will see administrator login password console where you have to key in the password for the administrator. So we'll choose a password according to the requirement of a policy. Okay, and we'll re-enter the password and we'll click on finish. So this should essentially complete the installation. We'll hit on Control Alt Del and key in the password. Okay, so this network is the first console that comes up. We'll just click on the default yes. Okay, and now we'll fire up PowerShell. Okay, and we'll pin this to the taskbar since we'll be using it a lot more frequently. So just click on this pin to the taskbar. Okay. Okay, and the first thing we'll try to do is configure a static IP for this node or computer. Now we'll fire up ncpa.cpl, which is a very handy shortcut for network opening up the network console. We'll just click on this Ethernet card properties and we'll disable this IPv6 first. We'll go to IPv4 and click on the properties and put in IP address. So we'll key in 192.168.26.107. Okay, and we'll give the first DNS as the router 192.168.26.1 and the second one will be itself. Okay, we'll close this. We'll hit on the PowerShell and try to, okay, let's first disable and enable it. This will refresh the IPs and will reconfigure with the new IPs. Okay, now let's hit Google. Okay, yeah, so this should come up after some time. Essentially the NIC card will take some time to configure. Okay, so now we'll move on to add roles and features. Click next to move to the installation type. Here we are going to go for role based installation, so we'll choose next. Here we'll choose the node name. As you can see, the node name is not correct. It's the one that came up with the binary. So we'll cancel this. We'll go to the open Explorer, click on the PC, go to properties and click on advanced features, go to the general computer name and click on change. Here we'll change the computer name as WinAD. Okay, and we'll hit OK. This will essentially ask us to restart the computer before the effect can change. Okay, yes, and we'll restart now. It will say take some time for the services to stop and then the computer will start again. Okay, so yeah, click here and we'll enter the password. The server manager will open up by default. It will take some time as it is a virtual machine. We have now set up the IP address and changed the computer name, and now we'll add the role of Active Directory and by the DNS as well. So we'll click on add roles and features. Okay, we'll click on next. Okay, we'll need to choose Active Directory domain services. We'll click next and yeah, we'll click on add features. Here we will not choose DNS as it will come in the configuration of Active Directory. So we'll click on next. Okay, and we'll click on next. ATDS next, and we'll click on the install. Now it will take some time for the installation to complete depending upon the amount of memory and CPU that we have chosen for this VM node. I recommend to take a high memory node when or giving it a higher memory while installation is running through, and once the installation is complete you can trim down the resources. Okay, so post this installation is complete, you will see a warning sign on top, and this will ask us to promote this computer to a Active Directory domain controller. Okay, so this is first DNS in this, so we'll choose forest and we'll give the name as sqlfrenzy.local as the domain name and click on next. There will be some configurations related to the forest and domain function level. This is just a way of letting this DC know what are the other configuration of DNS available for this farm. Okay, you can choose basically backward compatibility till 2008, but we'll just leave the default. Now DSRM is the safe mode for Windows DC, so this password must be kept really safe. So we won't be choosing delegation of DNS, and we'll move on to the next screen. Now we'll choose the NetBIOS name, SQL Frenzy, and we'll click on next. We'll get the default paths for this, and we'll accept it, and we'll click on next. Just check through the options that we have chosen. We'll click on next, and a couple of warnings show up, but we'll go with the install. Okay, so now the installation will begin. This will start promoting the server as a DC. It will take some time before the setup completes, as we should be seeing a pop-up stating the system will be restarted and AD was installed or removed. It will restart the system. The system will be booting up as a DC now, and the services will be starting for Active Directory. Okay, so now once the computer restarts, we will see the first Active Directory account, which was SQL Frenzy administrator. So the domain which we chose was SQL Frenzy. So we'll be seeing the first domain login now for the administrator account, which will be moving to the AD. The first AD account will be created by default. Okay, here you see the SQL Frenzy administrator. Will key in the password. Okay, again the server manager, your best buddy for Windows Server, will start up, and by the by, we'll fire up a PowerShell. Yeah. So now we'll click on or execute the dsa.msc, which is a good shortcut for Active Directory console. Now you see the Active Directory console has come up. So you will not find anything in the computers because we have not added, but if you go to the domain controllers, you'll find the first object here, WinAD, which we just created. Here we can see all the information related to this, and we'll see the member of, and we'll see delegation. Now delegation is an important feature which we'll be covering while installation of SQL and then authentication through AD. Okay, all the things look pretty much standard and normal, so we'll close this, and we will go back and create a users. So we'll create a user which we'll be using later on for our communication through Active Directory. So we'll name it as SQL on Tux. Okay, we'll name it as SQL on Tux, and the login user login essentially will choose the same name, which will be SQL on Tux. Okay, we'll hit on next. We'll give it a password. Okay, and we'll uncheck this feature of password prompting, and we'll click on password never expires, click on next, and finish. So we'll see a user SQL on Tux, which is we have created. Okay, so it's time now for us to look into the DNS management part. So let's fire up the command dnsmanagement.msc, which is the quick shortcut for DNS management console. Okay, so this is how prima facie a DNS management console looks like. Well, we'll have a hell of a lot of zones. So we'll begin with the forward lookup zone first. So you see SQLFrenzy.local, and there is no reverse lookup zone. So we'll create a reverse lookup zone. We'll click on next, and we'll be primary zone. Yes, we'll choose the defaults, and we'll look in the IPv4. We'll key in the IPv4 address, that is 192.168.26, which is the pointer record main function. Okay, and we'll choose the allow dynamic updates, click on next, click on finish, and we have a forward lookup zone and a reverse lookup zone now set up. So we'll give in the first entry, we'll add a pointer record for our DNS server. We'll choose 107, and we'll browse this. We'll go to the forward lookup zone, and we have to click on the forward lookup zone once again, and we'll choose the lookup zone folder. We'll scroll down and choose WinAD, which is our main record. Okay, click on OK, and you will see the a pointer record is created.